Bill Self finally gets the monkey off his back. He beats Jerome Tang in Manhattan. We're wall bashing not for K-State, but for Kansas and for Melvin Council, who let the dogs out. I'll tell you who. It's Kansas beating K-State 86-62. Let's talk about it. Some K-State fan is going to clip Kevin Wabashing and use it out of context, I'm sure, at some point.
There's also anyways, me wearing the K-State helmet, though, from when K-State won in football. So,
yeah. But anyways, this is a Pay Heat podcast, a live edition of the show here on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks, KCSN. We're live on Saturday night. It's cold outside, but it's hot in here for us with Kansas getting a big win over Kansas State, 86-62. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. Remember FDIC. He's Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer. If you're joining us live, you should be doing three things. You should like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share a comment. We've already got tons of great commenters in here. Melvin Council obviously was outstanding. We'll talk about him. Dave is here as always. Let's go, Dave. Big win. Big win. Philip says Melvin Council, Brandon Green, MU, and K-State. That's also pretty cool as well. How about this? Glad Council's chin didn't foul out. I want to talk about that too. I don't understand how that was possibly ruled a foul on Melvin Council, but
I get the cylinder thing, but it felt like Council was just like running by.
He was just trying to run back, and he just got clocked by an elbow, and somehow that's a foul. I don't know. But regardless, Kansas does get the big win, and Melvin Council and Trey White both put an emphatic exclamation point on the end of it, 86-62. There was a dunk at the end by Trey White to sort of really seal it for KU as the Jayhawks ran away in the second half. Derek says in the chat, loved every second of the second half. Yeah, the second half, I thought that my big takeaway, Kevin, really from this game was this was just simply a good team playing a bad team and just being superior and going out and doing what good teams should do against bad teams.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because I had a lot of, I don't know what your mentions were like during the game, Nick, but there were a lot of really upset KU fans in my mentions for a lot of the game because they're like, why aren't we killing these guys? You know, we should be up by this much. We should be up by this much. It was a game against your rival on their home court. You know, everybody was fired up and everything. And they wound up pulling away at the end. It was the result. If somebody would have said beforehand, Nick, hey, KU's going to win this one by 24, you would have applauded and said, yeah, that's fantastic. They closed out fantastically well. But really, I actually think that they played pretty well for a lot of the game. They played really well offensively in the first half, got incredible looks the first half, shot 56% in the first half, and that was with them missing some wide open looks, especially from three. Then you go into the second half. The defensively, I think obviously the game plan was make sure whenever PJ Haggerty touches the ball, you know, send about 35 guys at him and make somebody else beat you. And early on, the rotations maybe weren't as perfect. You had a couple guys that you didn't expect to beat you from three, beating you from three, but ultimately, you know, you had some regression to the mean a little bit, and Kansas's game plan turned out. They got all kinds of dunks down the stretch and really put this thing away.
Yeah, K-State heading into the game was dealing with some injuries in their front court. Several of their top front court guys were out. They were also missing Abdi Bashir. And yeah, I think the frustration, at least from me, Kevin, in part of the first half was that Kansas wasn't going inside enough, right? They weren't getting it inside to Flory and Tiller enough. And then in the second half, you saw them do that, right? And Flory obviously started cooking in the second half. You mentioned the dunks. It became Lob City down the stretch for Kansas. And that they really started to exploit that, and they really, really dominated in that area. Flory was outstanding. You know, K-State played their 7-2 Italian guy who early in the game was actually getting some offensive rebounds quite a bit against KU. That was the other frustration. KU was struggling a bit on the boards early in the game, but he dealt with foul trouble down the stretch and wasn't really a factor as the game progressed. And so that led to Kansas being able to be much better and really dominating in the interior. And yeah, Flory and Tiller were outstanding in the second half down the stretch. Tiller was great for the entire game. This was one of his better games, I think, in totality. He had a couple really great hustle plays, especially late in the game. You know, KU's up 20, Kevin, and there's a long rebound, and Tiller sprints after it and secures it for KU, with 90 seconds left when they're already up 20. those are the types of hustle plays you want to see, right? Is plays like that. So those two guys had a big impact. And then obviously Melvin Council doing his thing. By the way, KU had 5 players score. All 5 players scored in double digits.
Yeah.
4 of your starters scored in double digits. And then how about Elmarko Jackson off the bench, who was outstanding?
Elmarko Jackson was terrific
He had 19 points in the game.
Yeah, terrific, and scored some really big baskets in there too. The one part of your stat, though, that we talked about just before we came on air, one of those guys not to score was Damari McDowell, who had a pretty rough outing, I thought, when you looked at the fact he didn't make the open shots that he got. He made some really questionable decisions at times offensively, hurried into a couple shots, but even beyond that, he got off his feet and tried to make a decision in midair, which is a bad idea in general, but also a really bad idea when you're not a great athlete like Jamari McDowell is. But he also had a key hustle play at a big moment. And then that was sort of made up for by the fact that Elmarko Jackson was so good. How about when the game was close and you felt like, man, Kansas is getting 3-point looks that are good looks and they're not going down, and you felt like somebody has to make some shots. Elmarko Jackson hits a couple really big threes as part of that whole process. And so as great as he was in the second half of the Tennessee game, this may have been, if not his best game, certainly in that discussion over the course of a full game.
Yeah, and obviously we haven't even mentioned that Darryn Peterson was rolled out for this game earlier in the day today, so it was pretty clear from about 1:00 p.m. onwards that Darryn Peterson was not going to play, and so you knew that heading in, right? You knew, okay, you weren't going to get anything from him, and honestly, that's fine, right? Because you have a week off now. You're going to have a week off until you play against BYU, which, by the way, AJ DeBansa had 43 today against Utah earlier. I was watching that game leading up to the KU game thinking, oh boy, that's going to be an interesting matchup in Allen coming up next Saturday. But no Darryn Peterson in this game. And so that kind of led me to question what the rotation might look like for Kansas. And quite frankly, it didn't change. It was basically they still ended up only playing 7 guys. It was Jaden Dawson who came in, who ended up playing 15 minutes. And you and I
didn't realize he played that much. We said that right before we went on air. And you mentioned, he was kind of invisible was the word that you used for him.
Yeah.
But like you said, not really a quote unquote net negative for Jaden Dawson out there either. He got 15 minutes. You would have loved, though, if he was out there for 15 minutes to see him knock down a couple of those outside shots. He only took 1 shot in 15 minutes. You would have felt like this was a game where his shooting was, could have helped them out if he would have made a couple and maybe been the sort of thing where he would have made a play to start getting more time moving forward.
Yeah, and I use the term invisible, not even necessarily in a negative way, right? Like if you're just out there doing your job, but nothing's really happening for you, that's not a bad thing, right? I think his plus minus, if you're into that set, he was a +7 for the game, I think, for the minutes that he gave. So he was invisible. He only took 1 shot, but I wouldn't consider it like a negative performance from him, really. I mean, you would like to see him get more involved offensively just so that he could be somebody that you could, have the conversation about adding to the rotation, but it is very clear at this point that Kansas is pretty much just going to roll the ball out there with their 7 guys when Darryn Peterson is healthy. It seems like that's going to be the path going forward, probably most games, right? And obviously they're going to have a tough stretch where they're going to play a lot against some really tough opponents in a short amount of time over the span of a couple of weeks. So we'll see how well they hold up, if they continue to be really short on the rotations, when they get to that stretch. But tonight it worked out well because, you were going to have a week off. So, hey, Troy White plays 37 minutes. That's fine. Flory plays 33 minutes. That's fine because you're gonna have an opportunity to get those guys rested up before you have that BYU game. And Philip says, Philip comes in here and says you cannot make an invisible a positive. If you're playing defense and doing your thing and not letting your guys score, I guess that's fine, right? I mean, that's kind of the way that I look at it, at least. And so, again, the term invisible certainly applies more to him offensively, right? Where he's not even having any opportunities to take shots. But I mean, I don't think he played poorly without watching him too closely. I don't think he was, a negative out there, but it's pretty clear that that's going to be the rotation for Kansas going forward is those 7 guys plus, with Darryn Peterson instead of Dawson. But yeah, overall, just a really strong performance. I saw Derek mention it in the chat. The game really turned for me, Kevin, when it was 59-55 K-State had still been kind of hanging around. They just come out of the under 8 timeout. And from that moment forward, Kansas went on an unbelievable run. I mean, you think about that. So from the under 8 timeout to the end of the game, Kansas gave up 7 points to K-State, and they scored, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at math. What, 37 in that stretch? 27?
5.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really the turning point for me as well. Was it was a 4-point game at that point. K-State was still just kind of hanging around, and KU was able to deliver. Thank you, Derek. 27. Listen, I math is not my strong suit. I tried as hard as I could to avoid taking math in college. I took one math class in college. I barely scraped by. I apologize, but yeah, 27 to so think about it. 27-7 run to end the game from the under 8 timeout, and that's what you want to see when you're playing against against an inferior opponent, right? Just dominate down the stretch and take care of business. That's what Kansas did.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad somebody brought up, the Trey White SGA similarities, and we've seen it so many times this year, where Trey White's shot for whatever reason isn't working, or he starts off slow, and he just kind of grinds his way to the free throw line. And actually, as much as we want to talk about that run where Kansas was great to close the game out, it was pretty important to not let K-State, take the lead back in the second half. And Trey White was really important in sort of that grindy way of getting to the free throw line, slowing things down, not allowing, K-State wanted to get up and down the court. That's who they are. They wanted to run. And Kansas didn't really let K-State, for the most part, do what they wanted to do. And a guy like Trey White, drawing a foul here, getting to the free throw line there, it had a lot of impact on that. And I think that this is a game that if you didn't have Trey White, he's not going to be in the first few guys that you mentioned for having terrific games, right? Because Tiller was great. Flory was unbelievable and terrific defensively as well. Elmarko, we've talked about. Melvin Council Jr. was maybe the best player on the court. And with all of that said, you have Trey White out there that I think if he hadn't had that period where he's, grinding out a couple free throws here, doing this here, doing that there, I'm not sure that KU is in a spot to pull away down the stretch, because they might have been in a situation where maybe K-State is up 5 instead of them being up 5 at that point. And so I think Trey White had another really underrated performance.
Kansas, by the way, was really strong as a team from the free throw line. You mentioned Trey White. He was 6 of 6. Elmarko was 7 of 7. Tiller goes 4 of 4 from the line. Did a really good job there. 2024 as a team. K-State, if you take away PJ Haggerty, they didn't hit a single free throw. It was only Haggerty who was 10 of 12 from the line. Listen, people, what game was it who was claiming that Trey White was a free throw merchant? It was Colorado, right? They were chanting.
Colorado, yeah, they were chanting free throw.
The real free throw merchant is PJ Haggerty, bro. That's all this guy does. He has no other.
PJ Haggerty's amazing at it, and I say that he's amazing at that is because I think when KU wasn't up by very much in this game, Nick, my mentions were just a dumpster fire of. Did KU, or what are the KU coaches doing? Did they even game plan for this? Whatever. And I was thinking, you held PJ Haggerty scoreless for the first 18 minutes. And the reason they did that was because of the game plan that they had to take the ball out of his hands, to not allow him to get those looks. And so they really said, hey, one of you guys, you're going to need other people to beat us. We are not letting PJ Haggerty beat us. The fact that he wound up with 23 is amazing to me, having to deal with all that. Like you said, he did get to the free throw line a lot. That's something that he does. But I thought KU's effort against Haggerty was one of the better efforts I've seen from KU on an individual guy. Maybe over the last, 2 or 3 years. Obviously, they did a really good job on Jefferson for Iowa State earlier this year. But as far as taking one guy kind of out of the game and not letting him impact it the way that they want him to, I thought Kansas had a great game plan. And I thought when you looked at the shots that Kansas was getting offensively, it was very apparent that Kansas was having discussions about how best to exploit that K-State defense too.
Right. And you saw basically water find its level over the course of the game for KU's defensive strategy, right? In the first half, you shut down PJ Haggerty. He's not really impactful at all. But it turns out some of the other, guys on the periphery for K-State stepped up, right? Kostic comes in and hits 3 consecutive threes, which gives him a career high in the span of like 90 seconds. You had Castillo hit a couple shots as well. Buka, their big man, was scoring a little bit and having some impact in the first half. But then in the second half, you saw there just wasn't enough for K-State around Haggerty to really make an impact. And, that's the thing about PJ Haggerty is coming into this game, I thought to myself, man, Haggerty could score 20 and KU could still win by 20, which actually ended up happening. He scored 23 and KU won by 24. Haggerty could score 30 or 35 and maybe KU could even still win. What you couldn't have happen was for Haggerty to get his 20 and then have some of those other guys also make impact around him. Yeah. And in the first half, we saw that, and that was what allowed K-State to really kind of stay in the game over the course of the first half. But then in the second half, they hit 8 threes in the first half, only 2 threes in the second half. And they weren't really getting anything from anybody else on their roster besides Haggerty in the second half. And so you saw KU's defensive strategy, kind of pay off over the course of the game to where over time, K-State just did not have enough from anybody else really to help out Haggerty enough to keep them in contact. And then, as I talked about earlier, you had that stretch where, hey, it's a 4-point game. Kansas is able to put the pedal to the floor a little bit more, and there was no answer from K-State.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, just a quick piece of news. Jordan Gusky, who does great work at the Topeka Capital Journal, said that Bill Self said that Darryn Peterson should be available against BYU. That's not a huge surprise. Whose list is questionable for this game. Went through a shoot around. Yeah. They basically said, it's a little too tight. Let's not do it. But it was something that Self said that he should be ready to go for BYU, especially with a week from here until BYU.
Right. Robert in the chat says, I have a feeling we're going to sweep K-State this year. Boy, I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I sure hope so. That would be a real bummer if it didn't happen this year. The first time that Bill Self beats Jerome Tang in Manhattan. By the way, we got a comment from John earlier, Kevin, who says, need to hear some Elmarko praise. So let's talk a little bit more about Elmarko after this quick break.
I'm Brett Goodwin, one of the owners of The Learning Tree. The Learning Tree is a neighborhood toy store in Prairie Village, Kansas. This has been here in this location since 2000s, and my husband Alan and I purchased the store in 2023. Alan and I grew up in families where we've always wanted to have a business together. Alan grew up, for instance, his parents had a jewelry store. I worked in a local toy store here in Prairie Village when I was growing up. When this opportunity happened in 2023, we knew right away we wanted to contact them and pursue the store. We wouldn't have been able to get the store without the team at Emprise Bank. From the day we contacted them, they knew what we needed to do, which was very helpful. I would absolutely recommend the team at Emprise Bank to anyone looking to secure a business. We worked with Emprise from day one. They were extremely helpful. They were always great resources. We talk to them frequently. They know the area. They're very friendly. We know who we're going to talk with, and they know what we need to do. We hope we'll see you at the Learning Tree.
This is the paid podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network, a live edition of the show here on a Saturday night after a big win for Kansas basketball over K-State 86-62. If you're joining us, you should be doing 3 things right now. You should be liking the video, subscribing to the channel at Kansas Jayhawks, KCSN, and also share a comment. We love reading all your comments, reacting to your comments. If you have any questions, thoughts, share them in the chat. I'm sure we'll talk about them. John, before the break, had asked in the chat about some more praise for Elmarko Jackson. Kevin, what did you see from him tonight that you think allowed him to have maybe his best game of the season?
Yeah, Elmarko against Tennessee was in attack mode and really got to the rim, and he's got upper tier athleticism. Look, I get that he had a rough freshman year that, you could see it was a confidence thing. But the reason Elmarko was a 5-star and a McDonald's All-American and all of those things was this guy is an absolute freak show athlete. And so when he's feeling confident and when he's getting downhill, he can get in the lane pretty much whenever he wants against just about whoever he wants. And so there was a period after the Tennessee game where we saw Elmarko getting into the lane, but being more passive with it, right? He was kicking out and finding guys, and there was value to that. At one point, Elmarko had like 9 assists over 2 games to 0 turnovers. You'll take that every time. But I think he's starting to find that balance where he's finding, okay, this is when I can attack. This is when I can take a shot. He's not forcing it. He's also not being too passive. And tonight, Nick, one of the things that he did really well is the fact that he made outside shots, and that's something that he's been a little hit or miss on. But if he's open, you want him to shoot that because it's a good look. And so tonight he made those shots in key moments. And so to me, I think he's playing better defensively than he was a few weeks ago. I think he's attacking more with more confidence. And I also think that, when he's got an open shot, somebody say he's not thinking right now. Phillips said that. And so with him not thinking right now, he's just playing basketball and he's playing pretty well.
Yeah, I think Phillips' comment pretty much hits the nail right on the head. Bill Self has, I think, talked about it at length on several different times, really over the course of Elmarko's entire career since he's gotten to KU, is that when Elmarko is just playing, when he's just playing instinctually, when he's just playing off of his basketball skills and his athleticism, that's when he's at his best. And if he's thinking too much, it really kind of just messes things up, right? It's one of those things where if you're thinking too much and the game is moving too quick for you to try to catch up to it, you're one step behind, right? You're one pass behind, you're one thought process behind. For Elmarko, it's just about playing. And I think what we've seen from him is just that. I think that's what's been the biggest difference is he's playing with confidence. Somebody else mentioned, I think it was Derek who had also pointed out, or no, it was Dave who points out, before he was driving sometimes and maybe not always knowing exactly what his next move was. Now he's just driving to go try to score, go try to make plays, right? And in this game against K-State, there were several times where he drove and, drew a foul or got to the rim, pretty easily. And that's what you want to see, right? And so that's the biggest thing is he seems to be in rhythm, seems to be playing, very comfortably. And the one thing I think without Darryn Peterson tonight that we saw from KU is a lot of these guys, I think, just understood their roles over the course of the game. Yeah. And everybody was kind of playing to that with, Melvin Council being sort of that kind of alpha dog down the stretch. Trey White, who you talked about earlier in the show, Kevin, just kind of doing his thing. Flory obviously being very impactful in terms of the lobs and scoring. And Bryson Tiller with some really nice plays as well. And then Elmarko off the bench being that guy, right? So I think that's what you really saw overall collectively tonight from KU as well. And Elmarko Jackson, yeah, he's playing at a high level. And again, I talked about this before, but in this era of college basketball, and especially with Kansas fans, I know this is important. You want to have that connection to those program guys, those guys that have been in your program and have grown up and you've gotten to build something with them a little bit more. Obviously in the transfer portal era, that's pretty rare. Well, Elmarko Jackson is a great example of that type of player, right? Who obviously came in as a freshman, maybe didn't live up to expectations. Maybe the expectations were too much for him. Then he suffers the injury. Listen, many, many other times we've seen players, they would have just transferred, right? Would have said, hey, let me just wipe the slate clean, transfer out, whatever. He stuck around, obviously, and now you can see him flourishing in his role with Kansas right now as they get into the harder conference play.
Robert brought up the Trey White dunk, and I kind of want to talk about that a little bit too. First of all, Robert, thanks for your service, and thanks for
I saw Robert in the chat saying that he was honored for his military service. So
thank you for that. But also wanted to say, man, that was it was obviously reminiscent of a certain dunk that Bill Self previously called "quote unquote" a dick move, but to me. I think when you bring in competitors like Melvin Council and like Trey White and guys like that, it's tough to flip that motor off. And these are guys that probably had everything but the Holy Gospel yelled at them over the course of the previous couple hours. And Council was competing all the way through and knocked the ball loose. Trey White wound up getting it and completing the play. And to me, like I said, I didn't take it. Obviously, Council had a little fun with the Wabash cannonball after that. But I think one of the things that makes this team so likable and that people really enjoy about this team is the way that they battle and compete. And New Testament Christian there, I wonder if Bill Self secretly loved the last moment dunk. I think it's one of those things where, publicly you're probably like, come on, you can't do that, whatever else. And then privately you're like, yeah, that was kind of enjoyed that a little bit. And so I think when you have a really good team, they're a good team because you have the sum of their parts and they're greater than that. They come together to be something better than they are individually. And I think when Kansas struggled early on in conference play, for whatever reason, when they came back from the break, they were playing more individually. They weren't operating higher than the sum of their parts. They were getting beat to a lot of loose balls. They weren't competing at the same level. And I think with the way the team meeting, the way that they've ratcheted things up since then, Nick, I think that competitive aspect that showed up through that final dunk, showed up through, even Melvin Council doing the Wabash a little bit. I think that's what gives this team a chance to make a run in March, is the fact that these guys love and compete and battle for each other. And right now they are operating at a level that's more than the sum of their parts.
Yeah, and listen, there was a certain chance that was utilized by K-State down the stretch in the game, and so you hear that, yeah, why not go rub it on them, right? You haven't won there in a couple of years, go run it up, right? Go make a statement, go, do your thing, do the Wabash, love it. Also, Philip mentioned Flory's the thumbs down thing was
that was great.
I loved that. I loved that.
Died on that.
Dude,
yeah,
you absolutely yam all over a 7'2" guy, which by the way should have been a foul. Also, he tried to grab his head or whatever. I don't know.
Buka, this is a game that if it was at Allen Fieldhouse, Buka would have fouled out in 10 minutes because he was setting moving screens. He was on guys' backs. He hacked Flory at least 3 different shots that didn't get called. I think he finished the game with 2 fouls, but this is definitely one that he was allowed to. And I'm not trying to say the refs were one way or another. In generally speaking, I thought they let the teams play. Although Melvin Council Jr. may feel a little bit different with getting his face rearranged while running by, but I definitely thought. It on that play, as you mentioned, Nick, it looked like Buka probably should have gotten whistled, and it should have been an and one.
Yeah, look, for wrestling fans out there, Flory doing the little Batista bomb, thumbs down. I loved it. Also, a shout out from Texas Crispin here. See some RCSC trivia guys in here. Yes, Rock Chalk Sports Stock lives on over here as well. Thank you to those of you that participated in RCSC trivia back in the day with myself and Derek Johnson. But yeah, the Flory thumbs down was awesome. The Wabash at the end of the game was awesome. The dunk, and that's the kind of stuff that, like you mentioned, Kevin, it just shows the competitive fire, right? The competitive energy is always there with these guys. And I think fans will react very positively to that, right? I think that's something that will really, really get people to buy in and get, not only buy in from outside, but buy in from the rest of the team, right? When you have moments like that where you can see how much it means to these guys. And, again, listen, it's a rivalry game. Lean into it, right? Lean into it. Lean into beating up on little bro. Lean into stuffing Jerome Tang in a locker. I love all that too. It's awesome. Do more of that.
The finger roll by Melvin was super nice. It reminded me of the NBA Jam, like back in the old days, had like this little like scooping layup where it's like really exaggerated. And it kind of reminded me of that. But God, it's so much fun to watch Melvin Council Jr. when he's in attack mode. And I think that with him getting the steal there at the end, and Tang, it looked like said something to Melvin in the handshake line. Melvin certainly turned back to see what it was. It's hard to turn that off, and I'm not sure KU wants to turn Melvin Council off right now with the way that he's playing.
Right. Somebody, Dave asked here about the Tang getting the technical foul. Kevin, I know you tweeted this in the first half. When KU was at that end of the floor offensively, Tang was, let's say, having a hard time staying in his coaching box.
He was a sixth defender a couple times. Now, the worst guy I've ever seen on it is Shaka Smart. And, of course, Shaka, like, his teams, like, have a lot of pressure and stuff. If you remember when KU played Marquette in the tournament a couple years ago, in the midseason tournament or whatever, Kevin McCullough and Shaka Smart exchanged F-bombs back at each other. And I think part of that probably had to do with the fact that Shaka is out on the court, playing defense. But Tang courted that technical for a while. I don't know what he said in particular in that spot to get it, because that was actually not as far out on the court as he had been previously. But he had been kind of dancing on that line for a while. And so it felt like it was going to happen.
The other guy that I always see that's I feel like is constantly on the court is Jamie Dixon for TCU. He's another guy that I just always feel like it feels like he's 10 feet on the court on defense and whatnot. Joseph and Loomis brings up, by the way, mentions that could Melvin see the rim on that particular layup? I actually want to talk about this a little bit. Their Melvin Council is good for basically minimum one layup per game, where it's just like the most nonsensical circus level shot that just goes in. Like I swear, at least once a game, he is just throwing something up that like doesn't even make sense. Like the laws of physics don't even seem to calculate how. It's crazy. Right. At least once a game, I feel like he's doing that, and he certainly had one tonight where he just kind of flipped it up while he was like spinning, falling away. Again, I don't even know how he got his body to do what it did. And then the ball, yeah, he's always good for at least one of those plays, one of those shots a game. It feels like when he just is able to do something like that. I did have a question here also from the chat from earlier on from BYRL Productions asking, why do you think Rosario is so deep on the bench right now? Obviously, this is a game where you thought maybe he might have a chance to play because no Darryn Peterson. It ends up being Jaden Dawson. You still only play 7 guys. I think part of it right now, Kevin, is that this team and these 6 plus Darryn Peterson plus a little bit of Jaden Dawson. So basically these 6 guys, 7-ish guys, just seem to be playing in rhythm right now, right? They seem to be very confident playing with each other. And Cole Rosario, I think while he does bring a lot of energy and can be really, really active on the defensive side of the ball, we haven't obviously seen it click offensively basically the whole season. And so that's probably a little bit part of it too. But I think it's just one of those things where, hey, if you've got a well-oiled machine, why throw a spatter in the works?
I also think K-State's got some kind of, for lack of a better way to put it, Nick, kind of slithery guards, guys who are agile and can get through small spaces to get where they want. And while Cole Rosario competes defensively, I'm not sure that is quite his strength, getting switched on to guys like that. Jaden Dawson, I think, is a little more agile, and so I would think that could be part of it too. But, if Cole Rosario, if he sticks around, I would think that he has a bright future because of the way that he competes. He gets extra possessions. Bill Self, of course, loves that part of it. If he comes back, continues to work on the rest of his game, makes shots, he's somebody that you could see having a major jump in year 2. But as of right now, we joke around about the Bill Self circle of trust. It's not usually very big, and right now it feels like Cole Rosario is sort of outside of that circle.
Yeah, the Bill Self circle of trust trademark, by the way. I have a trademark pending on that, so nobody, there's 2 things that I have trademark pending: Badunga Dunk, which, by the way, damn it, Jason Benetti, you took it from me again tonight, and then the Bill Self circle of trust. And yeah, right now the Bill Self circle of trust, there should be absolutely zero doubt from anybody who is in the Bill Self circle of trust right now. It is basically the 6 guys we saw tonight, plus Darryn Peterson, plus kind of Jaden Dawson, who's like maybe half
trying to work in. He's trying to work.
He's like halfway in, right? He's like that one friend in your friend group who, sometimes you invite him, but you don't invite him every time. But he's just kind of there, and you invite him occasionally. But I think you guys know what I'm getting at with that. But yeah, that's the Bill Self circle of trust. Period.
Yeah, I want to go with
Robert. Never heard circle before. That's because I trademarked it. So don't.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot, guys. We have talked about
the circle of trust quite a bit.
Normally, I want to go with Robert's comment real quick on Rosario would have been a senior in high school, because I think this speaks to a more general point. Is when you have a freshman, I think everybody expects him to be Darryn Peterson, like maybe not to that level, but somebody that impacts winning in a major way right away. And a lot of times they're just freshmen, and that's not a knock on them by any means. They're young guys, and most guys they're going to hit a wall. They're going to struggle for a while. They're going to try and work through that. They can lose confidence. Elmarko Jackson, again, is a really talented athlete. He lost his confidence, and by the end of the year, he was a guy that was really tough for KU to have on the court in big games by the end of his freshman year because he lost that confidence. But most freshmen are guys that are going to be better in the future in their career than they are their first year. And so I say that to say, I know we asked about Cole Rosario and he should be in high school right now. I think it's also important to look at that when it comes to Bryson Tiller, because I think 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you would be so excited about Bryson Tiller and you'd say, this is a guy that is going to be an absolute star at KU. as a sophomore and junior, and he's got so much potential. But because he's needed to come in and be a starter and play such a huge role and have to work through the things that he has to work through, a lot of times he gets talked about like he's just another starter, right? Like, oh, Bryson Tiller fouled a guy 60 feet from the bat. What was he thinking right there? And it's like, well, he's still young. He's still figuring this stuff out. And there's going to be peaks and there's going to be valleys. It used to be if you got a guy like this and he was doing this as a freshman, you felt like, okay, we really got something here. We're cooking with gas. And now it's like, man, what's taking them so long to get on the right page? And so it's going to take a little while for Cole Rosario. Probably he is a younger guy, but I also think Bryson Tiller is a guy that we need to remember. He's a freshman that is going to have some ups. He's going to have some downs. It's going to take him a little while to work through it.
And tonight was a great game for Tiller, by the way. 6 of 8 from the floor, 16 points, 7 rebounds. Again, I mentioned earlier, he had some really nice hustle plays. Yeah, listen, I already told you guys, Circle of Trust is trademarked by me, obviously. Derek understands it. Yes, it's trademarked by me. So anybody, you have to give credit. And listen, I'm gonna send an email to Fox, ESPN, anybody else, and I'm gonna tell them, hey, but Dunga Dunk is also trademarked by me. So you better start giving me some credit on that one too. So yeah, I'm just letting you know on that. All right, let's take one more quick break here, Kevin, and then we'll share some of our final thoughts from tonight's game and more takeaways. We'll do that coming up next.
Hey, what's happening, people? It is Benny Heiss, KCSN betting analyst. And while the Chiefs may not be in the playoffs, that doesn't mean there is not plenty of action to go around for the rest of you that are still crazy fans of the National Football League. And with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, it makes every playoff moment feel bigger. So whether you're looking at individual matchups in the wild card or for a possible Super Bowl matchup or for futures come postseason time, DraftKings has your back, and they also have your back with early exit protection. If the player in your eligible NFL prop goes down at any point in the first half, guess what? You can still get paid in cash. What an opportunity. What a way to be able to enjoy the playoffs and not worry about anybody that you include in those props going down, especially early on, and ruining the rest of all of your legs. So here's what you do. You download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use the code KCSN, that is code KCSN, to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Remember, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. You must be 21 plus in most states. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
This is the paid podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network, a live edition of the show on a Saturday night after Kansas wins big against K-State 86-62. First of all, Joseph says, is 37-7 run also trademarked by Nick? Listen, that's just a little rude, okay? Keep that one to yourself. Math is not my strong suit, all right? That's been established. So, yeah, thank you, Dave. Journalism, not math, is also trademarked by me. Would appreciate you just keeping that thought to yourself in the future, Joseph. But in all seriousness, if you are joining us live, we so appreciate you leaving comments, sharing your thoughts. Be sure to do 3 things. You should subscribe to the channel, like the video, and continue to share those comments with us here live. We'll be continuing to do our live shows over the course of the remainder of KU basketball season. And obviously, if you're a Kansas basketball fan, you know that Kansas has a pretty important stretch of games coming up at the start of February. You can expect Kevin and I to have more live shows after those games. Right here on our YouTube channel. So you should subscribe at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN. If you are an audio only listener, we so appreciate you as well. You can leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple and Spotify. However you interact with the show, we very much appreciate you and thank you so much. All right, a couple of questions I wanted to get to here. There were some people talking about this earlier in the chat, Kevin, about Flory Badunga, and I just wanted to circle back to that. I kind of talked to us a little bit, I think, after KU's last game against Colorado. To me, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind, and I was reinforced in that thought again in tonight's game. This offense needs to flow more through Flory. He needs to be more involved. There needs to be a greater emphasis on him getting the ball, touching the ball. He has more than proven that he is somebody that you can get it to, and he can make plays. Tonight off the dribble, he was actually a lot better than I would have expected him to be at different moments, scoring-wise. this half-court offense, I think, absolutely must run through getting the ball to Fleury. That I had that thought already during the Colorado game, and tonight's game will reinforce that because Fleury again was really strong. Ends up 10 of 13 from the floor, 21 points, 10 rebounds, double-double. By the way, we didn't even mention somebody mentioned it in the chat, but Melvin Council almost had a triple-double. He had 12 assists and 7 rebounds to go with 17 points. But yes, I was increasingly convinced, and now I am 100,000% convinced this half-court offense needs to continue to go through Fleury Badunga, needs to continue to see him touch the ball in the paint. I want, there were even several times tonight where I felt like Fleury was in a good post-up spot, and some of these Kansas guards were hesitant to throw it to him. I want to see him continue to touch the ball. Dave mentions in the chat as well, his post moves have gotten a lot better. I think he's more than demonstrated that he has the ability to post up and make plays. And it's really not even about that. I think it's just about the fact that getting him the ball is going to open things up across the board for KU offensively. So that is one of my major takeaways, is that I think a lot of people got on Fleury early in the season because he wasn't necessarily putting up the numbers that maybe were expected of him after sort of the saga of the offseason where he goes to the transfer portal. It seems like Auburn's maybe going to get him. Ultimately, he comes back, and then he wasn't really maybe quite producing to the level that people expected him to at the start of the year. Well, now he is, and I think he actually has the potential to do even more if there is more of an emphasis to get him the ball in the post in the half-court offense.
Yeah, and I think he can pass out of the post, which is a big part of that too, because he's created some really good looks for Bryson Tiller over the last few games passing out of the post. He's created some outside looks that are pretty good passing out of the post. And so that's your worry sometimes when you have a post guy is, hey, if he's not going to move the ball, is it a black hole where you dump the ball in and then that's what your offense is on that play, is that guy having the ball? That's not the case with Fleury. And so to your point, I also think, hey, this offense should go through Fleury a little bit more, because that's not where the possession stops necessarily. Yeah, he can score on the interior, but he can also use the gravity that he gets, because you want to see a defense converge on somebody, give it to a guy like Fleury within 4 feet of the basket and watch what happens to the defense, and then try and make plays out of that. And so I think that's a big part of that. I do want to say this real quick, Nick, kind of off topic, but we like to hop in when there's stuff from the postgame press conference, right?
Sure, yeah.
Melvin Council Jr. Said that the team watched videos of K-State fans celebrating the past 3 wins here in Manhattan, and they took that personally. That's per Kellis Robinette at the Kansas City Star. Kellis also quoted Jerome Tang, "You never want to see anybody celebrate on your court. It sucks to see them do it. It really, really sucks to see them do it. I haven't experienced that before, and it is not a good feeling, not at all." So
good. I hope he continues to have more not good feelings about it.
So that was Tang's comment on it. And that was Melvin Council basically saying, hey, you saw me doing the Wabash. You were wondering why I did it. Yeah, we watched videos of their fans, getting after us after they beat us the last few years. One of the things I love about Melvin Council, and Dave brings up his love for him too, he's only been at KU for less than a year, and yet when you cut that guy open, he's crimson and blue. And I think that's one of the things that you love most about him, is a lot of times with transfers, it can be hard to attach to him because it feels like, oh, this guy's a mercenary, or he's just here for this. And, sometimes maybe even the effort isn't as good. Not only do you never second guess Melvin Council Jr.'s effort, it feels like he's been here for, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. That guy is as much a Jayhawk as people who have been at KU for the full 4 years. And I think that Kansas absolutely needed to find guys like Melvin Council and Trey White in that transfer portal who are going to come in and work and compete and be Jayhawks, that when you're in a tight game, it's more than just, hey, I'd like to win this game. They wear it as a badge of pride to be able to finish and win for the front of the jersey. And you feel that fire from Melvin Council Jr.
And that is exactly what we've been asking for the past couple of off seasons from Kansas in the transfer portal, right? Stop worrying about trying to find the guy who averaged the most points per game at his last stop. Go find the guy that is going to be crimson and blue, right? Go find the guy that's going to fit into the culture that Bill Self has cultivated over the past 20 plus years, right? Go find the guy that is going to, fit into what you want out of Kansas Jayhawks. And it seems like KU finally got that message, I think, this offseason. And yes, they've gone out and gotten, a pair of guys in both in both Trey White and Melvin Council that absolutely fit that bill. And you've seen the result. The result is, hey, these guys didn't average 20 points per game at their last stop, but damn it, they are going to play hard. They're going to play competitive, and they're going to have that chip on their shoulder, and they're going to play with fire. And that's what you want. That's what you want from players at Kansas, and they've certainly found that. So, yeah, you love it. And I think he loved the fact that he would say that he took it personally, despite the fact that he wasn't here, right? I mean, This is a guy that's been at several different stops, and yet, you can show him film of a game, from 2-3 years ago when he was maybe at his second or third school, whatever it may be. And he feels it personally about this rivalry, about this game. Right. So you love that. And you love the type of energy that he brings. I saw a fantastic comment from way back earlier in the show that said, never bring a cat to a dog fight. And I thought that was great. Love that comment. Whoever said that, I can't find it at the moment, but that was a fantastic comment from earlier in the show. And it's true. And, Melvin is continues to be, Dave called him the heart of the team, and you need a guy like that, right? Every team needs a guy like that. So,
but Missouri game too. He felt like he was the guy that took that game really personally as a rivalry game, and he a lot of times we obviously covered KU Missouri from the football side, and this was the first year that it came back, and Lance Leipold was talking about how they had to explain the rivalry to all the guys and kind of tell them, hey, it's like this. Nobody's really played in it that's here. Explain that. It did not take Melvin Council Jr. very long to understand the importance of KU beating Missouri, the importance of KU going into K-State to beat Bramlage. And so he's somebody that you really enjoy watching from a basketball standpoint, but just the competitive aspect, the leadership aspect, all of those things, they hit an absolute home run in the transfer portal with Melvin Council.
Joe in the chat is already making his claim, Kevin. He says that Melvin Council is the best KU transfer in the portal era. McCullough was fine, but he also didn't play when it counted. Yeah, I mean, McCullough obviously, unfortunately, got hurt, right, to end that season, whatever that situation was. But, yeah, I mean, Melvin Council's been outstanding up to this point. And I mean, listen, truthfully, I think Trey White's got to be in that conversation a little bit too with what he does and sort of the yeoman work.
We'll always give Remy that credit. Remy certainly turned it on when he needed to. And I would say a guy not in the portal era, and I know he said transfer in the portal era, obviously Jeff Withey was terrific and made a long run, but Malik Newman for like a month was maybe the best basketball player in America to lead them to a Final Four. It was unbelievable, honestly.
Yeah, I thought you might mention Jeff Withey as well. Obviously not transfer portal era as we understand it now, but certainly a guy who had a huge impact. And yeah, Dave says, Trey's been huge for us, but Mel has had that team changing fire. That I think that's definitely true as well. So Joe asked a question here earlier, Kevin, just to kind of wrap things up for tonight. Basically just asked, hey, big picture, what does this game mean? Is K-State just bad? To answer your second question, yes, K-State is just bad, right? I think to kind of bring this whole thing full circle back to the top of the show, like I mentioned, I felt like, especially down the stretch in the second half, this was the case of a superior team playing an inferior team and doing what a superior team should do against an inferior team, which is run them out of the gym in the second half, right? Overwhelm them down the stretch and win big. And that's exactly what Kansas did. So yes, K-State is bad. Now, something else to keep in mind here is that K-State was very shorthanded tonight. They didn't have several of their guys that they would normally start in their front court. They were also without Abdi Bashir, who's their best three-point shooter. So they were shorthanded, but still they are bad. And I think KU did an excellent job tonight, especially in the second half, of exploiting that and of demonstrating what a team should do when you're playing a bad team, regardless of where that game is being played, right? No matter where it's played, whether you're at home, on the road, neutral site, whatever it is, I think KU demonstrated that. They did exactly what you're supposed to do against an inferior team. I think big picture-wise, what does this game mean? Well, let's talk about it. Rewind the clock back to the start of January, Kevin, and we had this conversation about it feels like we've been talking about the stretch that Kansas has in February for years now, right? That's sort of the big bad start of February stretch where you're going to play BYU, you're going to play Texas Tech on the road, you're going to play Arizona, you're going to go to Iowa State, all that stuff, right? And at the beginning of conference play, I think you and I had this conversation about, okay, get through January with 2 conference losses, maybe, at worst, maybe 3, and you might feel okay heading into that stretch. Kevin, how many conference losses does Kansas have right now?
Carry the 5. 2.
That's right. They have 2 conference losses. They win tonight. They're 5-2 now in the conference, and they're on a 4-game win streak heading into the game against BYU. So big picture,
2-game win streak on the road.
2-game win streak on. Hey, you don't apologize for winning on the road. You don't apologize for winning on the road. But yes, so I think big picture for me, what it means is you have now set yourself up, if you're Kansas, to head into this tough stretch and say, you know what? Yes, we are a top 5 team in the Big 12, right? We can compete. We can have a chance to go and maybe win some of these games. And we'll see how many games they win out of this stretch. I think it would be ludicrous, even if you are the most optimistic, Crimson and Blue fans, to think that Kansas is going to get through that stretch undefeated or win all those games, right? I think that would be a little bit of a stretch, even if you're the most optimistic fan in the world. But you go into that stretch and you feel like, okay, now you're going to have a chance to maybe, hey, let's go to Ames and take one, or let's go to Lubbock and take one, right? Let's defend home court when you play Arizona and when you play BYU. And all of a sudden, you could be in the situation where you're in that conversation of being one of the top teams in the conference. If you had lost tonight, or if you had entered, this stretch heading into this game against BYU with 3 losses or more in conference, I don't think you would have that same feeling.
No,
I don't think you would be, sitting here saying, okay, Kansas can be a top 5 team in the conference. But because you were able to rally off those early conference losses on the road against UCF, which, by the way, UCF looks like they're actually a pretty decent team. I think Johnny Dawkins has done a good job with them. I know West Virginia got destroyed by Arizona today, but set those aside. You got a big win against Iowa State. You had the huge rally against TCU. You took care of business against Baylor as well. Now you've won 2 consecutive games on the road, and you're sitting here with 2 conference losses heading into that stretch where you can feel like, okay, go out, win, defend home court. Maybe you can steal a couple on the road, and all of a sudden you feel like you're a top 5 team in the conference. I don't really necessarily want to go as far as to say, hey, they're now for sure bona fide Big 12 title contenders, because you look at Arizona, you look at Houston, right? Like those are going to be very tough. BYU obviously probably needs to be in that conversation as well. But you now go in saying, hey, we're a top 5 team. We can compete with anybody in the conference. And then you see what you do in this stretch. And if you come out of it in the middle of February and you have maybe taken a road game here or there, you've defended home court, then all of a sudden, if you get to the middle of February and it's, hey, you're, whatever it is, 9-3 in conference, or, 10-3 in conference, whatever it may be, then you start to think, hey, now, okay, the Big 12 title's on the table. Let's finish the season strong. So I guess that's kind of my big picture takeaway from this game of how I'm feeling, where if you had lost tonight, I would be feeling horribly for a variety of reasons, but I would obviously not feel confident about Kansas being a top 5 team in the conference. The win tonight, I think, now sets them up to be in that conversation going forward. If they can go out, continue to defend home court, maybe get some wins on the road coming up as well, then, you can continue that. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at, kind of circling back to the start of conference play where I said, hey, get through January with maybe 2 conference losses. They did that. Okay, now you've set the stage for this run in February to really kind of prove, hey, are you a title contender, or are you maybe just a top 5 team, or whatever it may be in the Big 12. This upcoming stretch will answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the Big 12 race, I'm not saying KU is going to win the Big 12, but you have Houston and BYU. You only play them once, but both of them are at Allen Fieldhouse. And so if you're able to protect home court the rest of the way and then sneak out a road game here or two, like you mentioned, you're putting yourself into that discussion. Again, I'm not saying they're going to win the Big 12, but they have a chance because of the way the schedule unfolds. It's not going to be easy, but there is a scenario where Kansas is in a spot to potentially compete for the Big 12 if they can get through this next stretch pretty well. Somebody asked who KU is going to put on AJ Dybansa.
Future problem. Listen, future problem. We've got a week.
KU has switched 1 through 3. And they've switched 4 and 5. And I realize that's, not the easiest thing. I'm guessing what would happen would be similar to what they did against Boozer, which is you're going to send some doubles. You're not going to make guys have to deal with them one-on-one a whole lot. From a size standpoint, et cetera, probably Trey White would be your ideal guy. You don't want Flory in a situation where he's going to get into foul trouble working against him. Tiller would seem like the height, but again, Tiller can foul, and you don't want to be in a situation where Tiller only plays 4 minutes in the first half because he gets into foul trouble. And so I think you're going to see them switch through different guys in that scenario. The tough thing there is going to be the guys around Dybansa that can shoot. And so how do you double while also not giving up clean looks to guys that you don't want to give up clean looks to? But as Nick said, that's a problem for a week from now.
Future problem. Future problem. Don't worry. Listen, don't worry about the Dybansa tonight. All right. Just worry about stuffing Jerome Tang in that locker, getting the win in Manhattan. That's what you need to focus on for tonight. I think, because that stretch of games, you'll have plenty of time to worry about it as it gets here. But yeah, the bottom line is big win for KU on the road against Kansas State. 86-62. You had 5 players score in double figures, 5 different guys that scored in double figures. Flory had 21. We talked about Elmarko Jackson. He had 19, 17 from Melvin Council, and then 13 from Trey White, including the 2 at the end that I know a lot of KU fans loved when he slammed it home.
Hey, Nick.
What's up?
You watched a lot of the college football playoff, right?
I've watched it, yeah.
And you saw Michael Irvin pulling off his belt and kind of whipping the wall or whatever.
Yeah.
So a video just surfaced of the KU locker room and the post game. Was on Flory Badunga's Instagram stories of Melvin Council Jr. going belt to floor in the K-State visiting locker room. So Melvin Council Jr.'s dancing, him celebrating the win apparently did not stop once he got off the court either. So that video is out there, by the way. If you're looking for it on Twitter/X, Michael Swain, friend of the show, does a great job at fog.net, posted the video. So Melvin Council Jr. Taking the belt off and but belt to ass, apparently, on
how about that
state. So
how about that? Huge win for the Jayhawks. Got us feeling good on a Saturday night. Hopefully everybody's staying warm and staying safe out there. If you're anywhere near the Kansas area, you're probably dealing with some snow like many of us are. So make sure you're staying safe, staying warm. And KU's going to have a game against BYU coming up next Saturday night or next Saturday afternoon. We'll be live to talk about it. It should be a fun game. Hopefully we'll get a chance to see Dybansa versus Darryn Peterson at the college level, which should be exciting. We didn't really touch on Darryn Peterson tonight. Obviously he didn't play. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, but this feels like a team that without Darryn Peterson can be a really good team. But we've seen when he's fully charged up and everybody else is playing at the same level we saw tonight against K-State, they can be an even better team. So hopefully Peterson gets a chance to rest up and we get to see a little bit more of him for Kansas, because I think he will be critical for KU coming up in this stretch in February. Appreciate everybody for hanging out with us tonight. Dave, as always, thank you to you, man. You are I love you, man. You do a great job always in here with us. Appreciate it. Yeah. Derek as well. Listen, if you are here, you are automatically in Kevin and I's circle of trust. Okay. If you're here, you're in our circle of trust. So appreciate everybody for joining us tonight. We're going to be talking some KU football this week because we have the weekend between KU playing tonight and then playing against BYU. So we'll have a little bit of a KU football portal show to talk about. We'll update the KU football transfer portal in the offseason. And then we will be previewing KU and BYU as well later in the week. And then again, we will be live on Saturday afternoon after KU and BYU. So make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN on YouTube so you can join us and many other great Jayhawk fans like we had here tonight with us for the show. But until next time, he's Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer. We'll talk to you again very soon. Stay safe, stay warm, and rock chalk.